shimmered, a stark contrast to the turbulent energies now swirling through the cosmos. Armageddon was a discordant hum on the horizon, a prophecy poised to unfurl. But before the trumpets sounded and the celestial armies gathered, two archangels, Michael and Gabriel, were dispatched on a mission of profound significance. The resonance of the earth is, muddled, Gabriel, the messenger of divine pronouncements, observed, his voice like wind chimes in a perfect storm. There's a dissonance within the human spirit, a static that obscures the divine signal. Michael, the warrior and champion of righteousness, nodded, his gaze distant, piercing through veils of reality. The Lord's instruction is clear. We must seek the source of this distortion. He suspects a deeper entanglement than mere human failing. The Garden of Eden, their journey was a descent, a passage from pure light into a realm still clinging to the memory of paradise, yet now shadowed by the weight of millennia. Wildeden, though hidden from mortal eyes, remained a sanctuary, a living testament to creation's dawn. As they approached its veiled perimeter, the air grew heavy, not with the sweetness of primal innocence, but with a faint, cloying scent of decay, like forgotten metal mingling with ancient earth. They passed through the shimmering barrier, the fiery sword of the cherubim acknowledging their divine authority. Inside, the garden was breathtaking, a vibrant explosion of life that dwarfed the world outside. Towering trees, their leaves iridescent, stretched towards a sky that was perpetually twilight, bathed in soft, internal luminescence. Crystal streams sang through untouched groves. Yet, beneath the beauty, an unsettling quiet pervaded, a profound lack of the lively, innocent hum that should have filled such a place. The animals moved with a subtle wariness, their ancient instincts dulled by an invisible presence. "This is not as it should be," Michael murmured, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his celestial blade, though it remained sheathed. "The vitality is here, but the spirit. It feels suppressed." Gabriel, usually focused on communication, was now attuned to subtler currents. He moved through the overgrown pathways, his gaze sweeping over ancient moss-covered stones and blossoms that seemed to hum with muted energy. Then he paused, his eyes narrowing on a patch of ground near what once might have been a clearing, now choked with oddly rigid, dark vines. "Michael, look here," he said, his voice hushed. "The roots, they are not of this garden. They are parasitic." As Michael knelt, the true horror began to reveal itself. Beneath the seemingly natural growth, barely visible, were faint, geometric patterns etched into the very earth, intricate and precise. These were not the organic patterns of growth, but the cold, calculated marks of technology, ancient and alien. They dug with their bare hands, effortlessly parting the rich soil. What they unearthed sent a chill even through their celestial forms. Not simple artifacts, but a vast, interconnected network of metallic filaments, fine as cobwebs yet strong as adamantine, pulsating with a faint, unholy energy. Buried deeper still were small, obsidian-like nodes, each one throbbing with a silent, hypnotic thrum. "These are not human designs," Michael stated, his voice resonating with grim certainty. "And too complex for the earliest civilizations." "Indeed," Gabriel replied, touching one of the filaments, a tremor passing through his being. "This is a psychic conduit. And these nodes," he pointed to the obsidian devices. "They are resonant emitters. They amplify and broadcast thought, emotion, and desire." As they unearthed more, the scale of the hidden network became horrifyingly clear. It crisscrossed the entire garden, tapping into its primal life force, then extending far beyond its boundaries, a vast, invisible web spread across the entire earth. It was an ancient, sprawling nervous system, feeding on humanity's collective consciousness. "They have been here since the expulsion," Michael deduced, a flash of righteous anger in his eyes. "When the Lord's direct presence receded, when humanity stumbled into the knowledge of good and evil, they built this. Lucifer's army." Gabriel's face, usually serene, was etched with understanding and sorrow. "They didn't need to manifest openly, did they? They didn't need to wield swords or magic in the visible world. They merely needed to subtly manipulate. They saw it then, laid bare before them. The seeds of discord. The filaments hummed with echoes of suspicion, fear, and division, emotions amplified and directed, subtly nudging humanity towards conflict, intolerance, and a constant state of unrest. The lure of greed. The resonant emitters amplified desires for power, wealth, and material possessions, morphing natural human ambition into insatiable avarice that fueled empires and exploitation. The shadow of doubt, whispers of nihilism, despair, and self-loathing, subtly undermining faith, hope, and humanity's inherent connection to the divine. This was the static Gabriel had first sensed. The illusion of freedom. Humanity believed itself free, making its own choices, but these hidden instruments of Lucifer's fallen legions had been subtly influencing their collective psyche for millennia, twisting perceptions, whispering suggestions into the subconscious mind, turning virtue into vice and truth into relativism. "They never left the garden, not truly," Michael said, his voice low and dangerous. "They merely retreated into the shadows of its power, weaving their web from the very source of human potential. This is their grand deception." Gabriel looked out across the world, seeing the wars, the famine, the endless cycle of human suffering, now understanding the subtle current that had guided much of it. And Armageddon. It is not just a final battle for Earth, is it? It is the culmination of their final, most desperate manipulation. To push humanity to destroy itself, believing it is its own choice, while they remain hidden, victorious in the shadows. The truth was stark, cold, and utterly horrifying. The fall of Adam and Eve was merely the first domino. For millennia, Lucifer and his legions had not just tempted humanity from outside, but had been subtly controlling it from within the very heart of its lost paradise, amplifying its weaknesses, twisting its strengths, and steering its trajectory towards self-destruction, all while remaining unseen, masked by the very sanctity of Eden's memory. The silence that followed was broken only by the faint, insidious hum of the buried artifacts. Michael and Gabriel understood their true mission now. Armageddon would not merely be a battle of armies, but a reckoning with the very source of humanity's unseen bondage. The war was not just for the world, but for the very soul of mankind, still held captive by the silent, ancient puppeteers of the hidden garden. A grim resolve settled upon Michael and Gabriel. The horrifying truth of the hidden network within Wildeden was a blow, but also a clarifying revelation. Their initial mission to merely seek the source of distortion had now escalated to an immediate, profound threat to all creation. The very definition of Armageddon had shifted from a battle of armies to a battle for the very soul of humanity, currently bound by unseen chains. This changes everything. Michael finally broke the silence, his voice a low thunder. The purity of the garden, this sanctuary, violated for millennia. Their influence is deeper, more insidious than we ever conceived. His celestial blade, once sheathed, now pulsed with a faint, eager light, reflecting the righteous fury building within him. Gabriel, ever the strategist of divine communication, touched the pulsating filaments again, his mind racing. They weaponized humanity's free will against itself. They didn't force evil, they merely amplified the temptations, the insecurities, the primal fears, until they became irresistible currents. Every war, every act of hatred, every step away from the divine, influenced by this subtle whisper. He saw the vast tapestry of human history, now overlaid with the intricate web of Lucifer's artifacts, and a profound sorrow washed over him. To tell humanity this truth now, without preparation, would shatter them. It would be an even greater despair than the fall itself. Michael's gaze hardened. Then we must sever the connection. This network must be dismantled. He raised his hand, the air around him crackling with divine energy. But Gabriel placed a restraining hand on his arm, the gesture calm but firm. "Not yet, brother," Gabriel cautioned. "A direct assault here, while they are active and connected to humanity's collective mind, could cause an irreversible psychic shockwave. Imagine pulling a critical nerve from a living body. The damage would be catastrophic, perhaps even permanent. We would risk breaking humanity entirely, not just freeing them. The plan of divine intervention." Michael slowly lowered his hand, his initial surge of battle readiness tempered by Gabriel's strategic insight. "So, what then? We cannot allow this to continue." "No," Gabriel agreed. "We must act with precision. This is not a matter for brute force, but for divine surgery." He gestured towards the shimmering veil surrounding Wildeden. The veil itself, while protecting the garden, has also served as their cloak. "First, we must communicate this truth, not to humanity directly, but to the Lord of Hosts. He alone possesses the wisdom and power to coordinate the necessary steps." The two archangels ascended from the contaminated heart of the garden, their discovery a heavy burden. They passed back through the cherubim's vigil, the guardian angels acknowledging their grave expressions. Their report to the celestial conclave was stark. They laid bare the discovery, the ancient, insidious network of Lucifer's making, embedded within the sacred ground of Eden, controlling humanity's emotional and psychological landscape for millennia. They spoke of the psychic conduits amplifying negative impulses and the resonant emitters broadcasting despair and division. The heavenly host was struck by a profound silence, then a surge of righteous indignation. The sheer audacity of the enemy, to hide their greatest weapon within the very birthplace of humanity, was a betrayal of cosmic proportions. The Lord of Hosts, in his infinite wisdom, heard their report. His divine voice, though unseen, resonated through the celestial spheres, charting the course of action. 1. Strengthening the divine signal. The first step would be to increase the direct spiritual interventions on Earth, to counteract the psychic dissonance. This would manifest as heightened spiritual awareness, moments of profound clarity and compassion, and the emergence of more individuals across all cultures who championed unity, truth, and love. These would be humanity's antibodies against the subtle poison. 2. Preparing the Earth for severance. Key individuals, chosen and guided by divine inspiration, would begin to unknowingly prepare humanity for the psychic shock of liberation. This would involve a subtle shifting of global consciousness, a growing yearning for truth, and an increasing rejection of division, even if the source of that division remained unknown. 3. The timing of Armageddon, the final battle, Armageddon, would now be redefined. It would not merely be an external conflict, but the precise moment for the severance of Lucifer's network. The ensuing chaos of the final battle would serve as a cosmic smokescreen, providing cover for the delicate operation within Eden. The immense spiritual energy unleashed by the clash of divine and demonic forces would be precisely channeled to overload and destroy the parasitic system without utterly shattering humanity's fragile psyche. 4. The cleansing of Eden. Once the network was severed, Wild Eden would undergo a profound cleansing, purged of the lingering spiritual residue of Lucifer's centuries-long infestation. It would remain veiled, a pristine sanctuary, but its influence on humanity would shift from a tainted whisper to a pure, healing resonance, subtly guiding humanity towards its true, unmarred potential. Michael and Gabriel, now fully aware of the true nature of their enemy's grand strategy, felt a new kind of purpose. The fight was not just against visible armies, but against an ancient, invisible tyranny that had shaped human history. Armageddon would not just be a war, it would be a cosmic liberation. With this new understanding, what do you think? A conclave of shadows. The celestial decree set the grand strategy, but its execution fell to the tireless vigilance of Michael and Gabriel. The greatest challenge, they soon realized, was not the physical might of Lucifer's forces, but the subtlety of their influence and the tight temporal window within which the intricate plan had to unfold. Armageddon was approaching, and the cosmic clock was ticking. Their next actions were not thunderous charges, but a meticulous, silent war fought on the ethereal planes. Michael, the Archangel of Righteousness, took on the role of celestial counterintelligence. He deployed legions of loyal angels, not for direct combat, but for infiltration. These specialized angelic units, cloaked in divine light that rendered them invisible to the fallen, moved across Earth, their mission to identify and subtly disrupt the most critical nodes of Lucifer's psychic network. They didn't destroy them directly, that would risk premature exposure and an uncontrolled feedback loop, but rather introduced minute distortions, tiny glitches in the matrix of the enemy's control. A sudden, inexplicable surge of empathy in a warlord's heart, a fleeting moment of doubt in a demagogue's speech, a spark of unconventional wisdom in an innovator's mind. These were the subtle nudges, the cracks in the enemy's seemingly seamless control. Meanwhile, Gabriel, the Archangel of Revelation, focused on accelerating divine inspiration and amplifying human potential. He whispered into the dreams of scientists seeking cures, guided the hands of artists crafting works of profound beauty, and ignited the resolve of activists fighting for justice. He encouraged every nascent spark of human connection, compassion, and courage. These were the antibodies the Lord had spoken of, strengthening humanity's collective immune system against the pervasive psychic infection. He also worked to prepare a select few human vessels, individuals of extraordinary spiritual fortitude, to unconsciously withstand the coming psychic shockwave, future leaders, healers, and thinkers who would guide humanity through the aftermath. The Crucible of Armageddon, a symphony of severance. As the prophesied time of Armageddon drew near, the spiritual tension on Earth became almost unbearable. The subtle distortions introduced by Michael's angels amplified the pre-existing chaos, creating a cacophony of conflicting energies. Wars flared, ideologies clashed, and humanity seemed to teeter on the brink of self-destruction. This was the cosmic smokescreen, a world so engulfed in its own perceived turmoil that it would not notice the true battle being waged at its heart. The day came. The skies above Wild Eden, still veiled from human sight, writhed with unseen forces. Below, on Earth, the final battles of Armageddon raged, a crescendo of human conflict that, paradoxically, provided the necessary energetic cover. Inside Wild Eden, Michael and Gabriel stood ready. The ground beneath them pulsed with the insidious hum of Lucifer's network. The obsidian nodes throbbed faster, sensing the impending end. "Now, brother," Gabriel cried, his voice echoing with the authority of a divine herald. He spread his wings, and a blinding wave of pure divine light erupted from him, washing over the garden. This was not destructive, but a surge of revelation, designed to overload the psychic conduits with raw, unadulterated truth and purity. The network, designed to manipulate negative impulses, recoiled from the sheer force of unconditional love and light. Simultaneously, Michael unleashed his own power. He raised his celestial blade, not to strike, but to act as a conduit. Through him, flowed a concentrated torrent of divine judgment, not wrath, but a focused, righteous energy intended to sever the parasitic connections. It was a surge of cosmic justice, precisely calibrated to target only the malevolent, artificial filaments, leaving the organic life of the garden unharmed. A guttural, unseen scream reverberated through the ancient ground of Eden. The obsidian nodes cracked and shattered, not into dust, but into dark, ethereal mist that dissipated instantly. The metallic filaments, woven for millennia into the very fabric of the garden's energy, recoiled, writhed, and then, with a sound like tearing silk, detached. The parasitic network, the grand deception of Lucifer's army, was finally severed from the Earth. The dawn of a new humanity. As the last tendrils of the network dissolved, a profound silence descended upon Wild Eden, a silence that was not empty, but filled with a new kind of peace. The cloying scent of decay vanished, replaced by the pure, invigorating aroma of chlorophyll and living earth. The animals within stirred, their ancient instincts reawakening, their eyes reflecting a clarity long lost. Outside, the last echoes of Armageddon's conflict faded. The world was scarred, yes, but the deeper psychic wound had been cauterized. Humanity, though exhausted and confused by the intensity of the recent conflicts, felt a subtle shift, a lifting of an unseen burden. The constant static, the subtle whispers of division and despair, had ceased. Michael and Gabriel, their mission accomplished, stood amidst the now truly wild, truly Edenic garden. The purpose of their task was not to return humanity to a state of innocent ignorance, but to restore its true free will. The knowledge of good and evil remained, but the malevolent manipulation of that knowledge was gone. Humanity would still face choices, still grapple with temptation, but now, the choices would be truly their own, unburdened by an ancient, hidden puppeteer. Wildeden remained veiled, a sacred memory, but its pure, untainted resonance would now subtly guide humanity. The river that flowed from its heart, once diminished, began to flow again with renewed vigor, its waters carrying not just life, but the promise of clarity and spiritual renewal to the distant lands. The conclusion was not the end of struggle, but the beginning of true, conscious humanity. Liberated from unseen control, humanity would now embark on a new chapter of its story, one where the path to a new Eden, a state of chosen harmony and enlightened understanding, would be forged by its own untainted choices, guided by the subtle, pure whispers of a truly free spirit. The long journey, from the first bite to the final severance, had finally led to the possibility of genuine self-determination, the true meaning of being human. Epilogue. Echoes of Choice. Centuries unfolded in the wake of the Great Severance. Humanity, unknowingly freed from the subtle shackles of Lucifer's hidden network, began a slow, often turbulent, journey of rediscovery. The immediate aftermath of Armageddon was marked by exhaustion and rebuilding, but beneath the surface, a profound change was taking place. The collective human psyche, no longer subtly manipulated, started to breathe independently, to truly think and feel for itself. The static that Gabriel had sensed for millennia had cleared. Decision-making, while still challenging, no longer felt weighted by an unseen pressure towards negativity. Global conflicts, though they didn't vanish overnight, became less about ingrained, irrational hatreds and more about tangible resources or ideological differences that could, theoretically, be resolved through dialogue. The subtle undercurrents that once fueled greed, despair, and relentless division had dissipated, leaving behind the raw, unadorned landscape of human nature. Great strides were made in understanding the human mind and spirit. Therapies evolved, not just to address trauma, but to help individuals navigate the newfound clarity of their own thoughts and emotions. There was a burgeoning interest in mindfulness, empathy, and collective well-being, not as abstract concepts, but as essential tools for a self-directed species. Humanity began to truly grapple with the responsibility of its own free will, realizing that the choices made, both individually and collectively, now carried an unmitigated weight. Wildeden, its veil still intact, pulsed with a renewed, vibrant energy. The cleansing had been absolute. Its purpose shifted from a hidden battleground to a silent, constant wellspring of pure, unadulterated divine resonance. It no longer influenced in a manipulative way, but inspired, subtly, gently, projecting an unwavering frequency of harmony and life that humanity, now attuned to its own truest self, could perceive and emulate. Explorers, mystics, and even certain scientists found themselves drawn to specific, otherwise unremarkable, geographical points on Earth, sensing a unique spiritual energy that flowed from the garden's now purified river systems. These places became centers of contemplation, healing, and profound insight, unconsciously benefiting from Eden's quiet resurgence. The lessons of the bite, the fall, and the subsequent severance became integrated into the collective human story, though the details of the hidden network remained a divine secret. Humanity learned that true paradise wasn't about being shielded from knowledge or choice, but about consciously choosing goodness even when evil was understood. It was about forging virtue in the crucible of real life, building a future based on deliberate compassion rather than compelled innocence. Michael and Gabriel, from their celestial vantage point, continued their watch. They saw the struggles, the occasional missteps, but also the accelerating growth, the genuine laughter, and the increasingly self-directed acts of profound love and creativity. Humanity was no longer merely surviving. It was actively choosing its path, often faltering, but always with the genuine capacity for redemption and growth. The journey to a new Eden, a conscious, self-made paradise, had truly begun. It was a long road, filled with human effort, but now, finally, the path was clear of the ancient, hidden shadows. The only limits were humanity's own choices.